Major League Rugby. No Giltinis this week, but still some pretty good games being played. I think the pick of them was probably New York and New England. Unfortunately, I only caught the highlights for that one. I never know the results when I go to watch the games or the highlights because I'm pretty good at avoiding spoilers. But yeah, suffice to say, I didn't pick the right games to watch this week. I watched the first one, DC against Dallas. Unfortunately, this was one that about maybe 6 weeks ago I was thinking this could be awesome because both these sides were winless, but DC have steadily been turning things around for, I don't know, a good month now. And Dallas have had to recruit a bunch of guys from other teams on short-term loan deals and whatnot because they had a bunch of guys taken out in an off-field accident. So yeah, two teams on very different runs right now. So they met kind of at the wrong time. I wish this game had been scheduled or arranged about 6 weeks ago, and I think it would have been a good game. But 50 points to 10 is a bit of a hiding. I mean, DC almost scored within about 30 seconds, which was pretty ominous. And yeah, they powered on some points, man. I think it's what Iscaro got the first one, the loose head prop to make it 7-0. They got one down the right wing to make it 12-0. Fa'anana Schultz got a nice try assist off the back of a scrum to make it 19-0. Dallas looked to have scored one before half time, but there was obstruction in the build-up, so unfortunate. And then there was a bit of handbags or melee or whatever you want to call it, pushing and shoving, which was pretty extended. And there seemed to be really slow communications between the referee and the TMO. Like there seemed to be like an audio delay or whatever. It didn't seem to be a very good line anyway. So it took them a long time to work out what was happening. Eventually, Sal from DC gets yellow carded for essentially escalating the situation of pushing and shoving. But Dallas, unfortunately, concede rather than score during the yellow card period. Nagali, I think, is the one who goes over the big lock. So, yeah, tough times if you're a Dallas fan, but good stuff from DC, obviously. To be fair, Dallas did get 2 unconverted tries through Hayden Hill. One of them was absolute magic. Like, at least you got something to cheer about. A little dink through into the corner and fingertips to touch it down before it goes dead. And he gets another one, which was essentially the same move twice. But yeah, it's too little, too late. It's too little in the losing effort, isn't it? So, yeah, pretty unfortunate one. As I mentioned, two teams on very different trajectories, but good for the DC fans to get two wins now and a good win in front of their fans. So, 2-9 against none from 11. That's where the two teams are at. Still both are bottom of their divisions, 6th in the East and 7th in the West. DC are now on a bye, which is kind of unfortunate because they're just building some momentum. And the Jackals will face San Diego at home in the next round. The next game, Houston and Toronto. It doesn't look that bad when you think 29-17, but I think it was 29-0, wasn't it? Toronto essentially scored 3 late tries in this one to pull things back a little bit, and they've been a little bit stuttering. I think they must be 2 from their last 4. I think they dropped one at home, won a couple at home, but not like really emphatic wins. And then this is a bit of a disappointing loss, but certainly good for Houston. And I'm happy to rock their gear in this video. They showed some real power to go over. The first try is their hooker, the second try is their prop Zeiss. So 14-0. They just love the tap and go from close range, don't they? There was a Houston red card for a tip tackle. And then they had 2 yellow cards as well. So they kind of did it with, wow, how many minutes was it? Like 30 to 40 minutes? I think the last yellow card was right at the end. So, yeah, they did it with a lot of time with having a player down. But they didn't concede any points during the red card or the first yellow. So, yeah, they did pretty well. I guess they took the foot off the gas a little bit at the end. But ultimately, that's a pretty tidy win. So they're 6-5, still in the hunt are Houston. They are in 4th in the West, but they do have the bye next. Toronto, likewise, the same record, 6-5. They are 4th in the East. So both those sides still in the hunt, but that's a much more needed maybe win for Houston, but pretty disappointing one for Toronto. Remember, they still do have a big home stint coming up. NOLA and AG. I guess kind of to be expected 32-10 win for the AG boys. They are still pretty high flying. It was 12-0. They scored in 2 minutes. 12-0 after, I don't know, not that many minutes. NOLA on 14 minutes did get one, but man, do they have to work for it, eh? They absolutely had to grind and grind and grind through so many phases just to break the AG boys down. I think Feeks went over for that one. He's the inside centre. But yeah, and then a bad line out ends up in a weird kind of try for NOLA as well. So sometimes you see stats for things like bad passes, but often it's like bad passes that maybe hit the ground that ends up causing guys to make bad defensive reads or whatever because they've got that moment of uncertainty as to what's going to happen. Similar with this line out. It's a line out for NOLA. It doesn't go according to plan, but a phase later or 2 phases later, they're able to kind of grind their way over. So yeah, sometimes if you ever see those stats listed which say like bad passes, maybe take them with a bit of a grain of salt because they can turn into gold. So yeah, I think it was like 19-10 at halftime, so still pretty much game on. But as you can see, no more scoring for NOLA in the second half. AG just able to kind of power away with this one. So they are still one of the form teams at 9-2. First in the West, NOLA 3-8, fifth in the East. Yeah, there's a bit of daylight between them and some of the other teams. So away to New York for NOLA is a tough trip looking. And then AG are home to Seattle, which could be a pretty interesting game actually because Seattle's been tracking not bad. Speaking of them, they got a win away at Utah. They had to work for it. They absolutely had to work for it. Remember, Utah are not having a great season, so this is maybe one where you would have thought Seattle would do a bit better. They got a yellow card early to Hatting, but he made up for it later with one of the absolute tries of the weekend. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth going to look at the highlights of the Utah and Seattle game just to watch that try. It's basically, I mean, they scored a couple of penalties, so it's like 6-0, and they just go coast to coast. From like a line-out turnover. It's proper class. And Hatting, the man who was yellow carded, the captain, he's the man who finishes it off. So 13-0. But Utah actually managed to mount a bit of a comeback, which was a little bit surprising. When I saw it was 13-0, I thought this is just going to be kind of predictable stuff. But nah, man. They got one before half-time and then took the lead early on in the second half. By 76 minutes, it was still game on. Seattle had like a 20-14 lead. But Utah's attacking chance down the Seattle end, like line out, not straight. Like you can't be doing that. When you're in attacking position with only a few minutes to go, you need your execution to fire, and it didn't. So disappointing for Utah. Still 2-8 now. Away to New England. That's a tough trip. They are 6th in the West, out of the hunt. And Seattle, they are 3rd in the West, so in that playoff spot, 6-5. They are away to AG. So this was an important win to get because this is, in theory, the easier of the 2 games that they've got. So, yeah, we'll see how things go for them. One that was probably the game of the round, New York and New England, 29-26. It starts like a cracking one with Ed Fidow has been an absolute cracking form. Like, there's a few guys who just seem a cut above in this competition thus far, who are just having great seasons. Obviously, Bodine Waka is one, Ed Fidow is another. And they're both playing in this game, which was, really pleasing to see. Fidow gets the first one down the left wing, stutter step, and then beats the final man. Classy try, 7-0. Balakana gets one. He's another guy having a pretty good season, to be fair, from a high ball. That one, I think, was Bodine Waka's kick. Of course, that guy's involved in the build-up. So New England take the lead, and then maybe the try of the game is the Bodine Waka try in like 35 minutes, where he kind of dinks it over. I don't know if he meant it for himself. But after like seemingly a half moment hesitation, he decides to take off after it. And everyone for New York is just, seems like they're in slow motion. I don't get the deal with that. But then Waka just pounces on it. And he seems like very surprised that he was able to regather that ball. So, yeah, crazy stuff. New York are well behind at that point. But they mount a comeback, man. They're 24-7 down. They mount a comeback. Couple of tries. I think one was like Wingelski. So it's 24-21. That's properly game on. New York managed to take the lead with his little dink through for Fidow, so he gets a double. But then, New England are not done. Milan gets one with only a few minutes to go, and that puts them in front. It's like 76-minute try. So it puts New England in front. Like proper dramatic finish. Absolutely game of the weekend. If you're going to watch one game of MLR, they're all free on the Rugby Network if you got this far through the video. that's certainly the one to watch. Both these teams have good records. The only thing you might not like about it if it's your first time watching MLR is the field has still got all the American football markings on it, so it can be a little bit confusing. But yeah, certainly a really good game. Two classy sides. New England are home to Utah, first obviously in the East with their 9-1 record. New York home to NOLA. They're third in the East at 6-4, so they've still got some fighting to do to make sure they retain that playoff spot. The final one, San Diego and ATL. ATL is another one that's on a pretty good run. 30 points to 17. Good away win for them. Their maul, man. Their maul is just brutal. It gets a penalty try early. So there's a yellow card for the San Diego boys bringing down the maul. And then ATL get another try before halftime. But there is there's a try to... Who was it for San Diego before halftime? Is it Pryor? I can't remember, but it's 10 points to 15 at halftime, so it's still game on after seemingly the ATL boys were going to run away with it. But like I mentioned, that maul, man. Van Rensburg, the hooker, gets one for ATL again from the maul. There's a pretty sweet cross kick from San Diego on, what is it? Whatever minute, I haven't written it down. But it brings it back to game on, 22-17. And to be fair, the goal kicking in this game was actually pretty sweet. There were some pretty tough kicks in the win from the sideline. Both sides managed to get some good ones. Not 100%, but still managed to get some good ones. But unfortunately for San Diego, Nonu gets a yellow card with like 4 minutes to play, and then Bowman as well. So they go down 15-13. ATL are able to run in one last try. So it finishes 30 points to 17. They score out wide. It's the stuff you expect to see. When you've got that extra space from the extra two players. So, yeah, good stuff from ATL. Their pretty good run goes on. They're home to LA, so that's going to be maybe the game of the week next week. That one should be pretty tight. And then San Diego away to Dallas. So, yeah, second in the East for ATL. Fifth in the West for San Diego. So, yeah, those were the games at the weekend. You guys let me know your thoughts, how they went. Like I said, I reckon the Freejacks in New York one was probably the game of the weekend. There was certainly some drama and a heck of a try in that Seattle game as well. Sad to see the Jackals blown out like they were, but as I mentioned, two teams on kind of different runs at the moment. And yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.